Pablo Escobar, who lived from 1949 to 1993, was a drug trafficker who specialized in smuggling cocaine from Colombia to the United States. While Pablo Escobar was heralded for building many huge neighborhoods for poor people living in slums, he also killed thousands of politicians, citizens, and police officers who opposed his ideas and exposed the effects of cocaine on the people that got it from him. Pablo Escobar was born in Colombia in 1949 into a very poor family. He had one brother, Roberto Escobar. As a teenager, he liked to be around his cousin Gustavo Gaviria, who would get them both into trouble. They pulled off crimes like stealing cars and selling stolen items. Pablo loved the feeling of having money. He swore to himself and to his friends that if he didn't get 1,000,000 pesos by the time he was 30, he would kill himself. Soon after this declaration, Pablo Escobar was arrested and sent to prison for driving a stolen car. While in prison, he met a famous marijuana smuggler, Alberto Prieto. After prison, Pablo went to work for Alberto, smuggling drugs into the U.S. Working as a smuggler for Alberto gave Pablo valuable insights into the world of narcotics that would shape his future life. While on a smuggling trip, he discovered a white paste, which when mixed with some chemicals, turned into a highly addictive drug called cocaine. This was the beginning of his drug smuggling empire. With the earlier successes in smuggling cocaine, Pablo Escobar aspired for a more acceptable public role in society. He turned to politics. Through politics, he wanted to make a change in the lives of the poor people. He knew what life was like for the poor, since he had grown up that way. He wanted to build neighborhoods, soccer stadiums, schools, and hospitals for them. He was elected into Congress after a lightning-fast campaign, but this all came to an end quickly. He was ejected from the Colombian Congress when a reporter presented a newspaper article about finding 39 pounds of cocaine in Escobar's car. After being rejected by politicians, he turned all of his attention to the cocaine smuggling business. With all of the money he made from drug smuggling for his Medellin cartel, he was soon one of the richest men in the world, with a very large and beautiful estate called Hacienda Nápoles. It included life-size statues of dinosaurs, a giant water park, a zoo with many exotic and rare animals, and of course, his very own collection of planes, boats, cars, motorcycles, and even golf carts.
For living.
Before this, before you really knew, what kind of father was he?
Well, he was...
as far back as you can remember.
Well, I remember him giving me a lot of love, being at home with me and my family. He was a very good man with me. I received a lot of love from him. That's what I remember. I also remember when we went to see the poor villages in Colombia to help them. And that's the father that I knew at the beginning. But of course, he's now more remembered thanks to his violence.
Beside building himself many luxury homes, he did give money to the poor. Through his triumph of riches, he was seen as a Robin Hood. He did build many neighborhood homes, hospitals, schools, and soccer fields for the poor. This area is still known as Barrio Escobar to this day, but this all came with a price. Here is Steve Murphy, a retired DEA special agent, talking about why he built homes for the poor people.
Housing for these people, and that's a good thing. And he built clinics, and he built soccer fields, and he gave away food, he gave away money. Those are all really good things. But there was a payback. He didn't do it out of the goodness of his heart. When his sicarios, at one point he had as many as 500 sicarios, and that sicario is a Spanish word for assassin.
Yeah.
So he had as many as 500 sicarios protecting him as they were being killed, and he needed new recruits. Where do you think he went to get them? Right back to that neighborhood, right? Because those people thought he was like a god.
Pablo would send his sicarios, assassins, to kill people who were against him, including
judges, police, politicians, including a presidential candidate.
Here is Steve Murphy talking about how many deaths are attributed to Pablo Escobar.
We attribute 10 to 15,000 murders to Pablo Escobar. There is one surviving member of his organization who still lives in Colombia. He's out of prison now. Everybody calls him Popeye. His real name is John Jairo Vasquez Velasquez. Now he's written a book. I mean, he's got his own TV show on Netflix. He's done a movie. He's a psychotic individual, is what he is. And he's got these tattoos, and he goes around taking pictures like he's some kind of folk hero. But the reason I'm telling you this is where we say Pablo's responsible for 10 to 15,000 murders, Popeye says the number's over 50,000. I mean, just think about that, 50,000 people.
Another way that he would kill his targets would be to send a car bomb next to the building that the target would be in, and then remotely blow it up, killing the target as well as other innocent people. This tactic was also used against him and his family in a war against the Cali cartel, a competing drug smuggling organization. Towards the end of the war between the Medellin and the Cali cartels, a group formed called Los Pepes. Here is Steve Murphy talking about the vigilante group Los Pepes.
And then you had the group Los Pepes come in who were killing anybody that was associated with the family, whether it could be lawyers, it could be bankers, money facilitators, even school teachers that were teaching his children. I mean, I don't condone, and Javier and I we don't condone Los Pepes at all because they're just a murderous group of vigilantes. They were just every bit as bad as Pablo Escobar. But they had a lot to do with taking down his organization. Boy, you're not kidding. It really did take over our lives. And we tell people being a DEA agent, it's not a career, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And so when you're working against the world's first narco terrorist, which is what Pablo Escobar was, and at that time he was the world's most wanted criminal.
On December 2nd of 1993, the DEA traced a phone call between Pablo Escobar and his son, Juan Pablo Escobar, to a home in Medellin. When the DEA and Colombian officials arrived at the house, Pablo Escobar and his bodyguard escaped on a rooftop, and a chase began. Pablo Escobar and his bodyguard then shot at their pursuers, but they fired back and cut them down. He was loved by many people in Colombia, and many people were very sad to hear about his death, because he had given them shelter and money to survive. Many memorials were held or tributes put up in his memory. Here is Steve Murphy talking about the triumph and tragedy of Pablo Escobar and what everyone should take away from Pablo Escobar.
Within the theme of triumph and tragedy, do you think Pablo Escobar is a good example of the theme or not?
I think he's a good example of how evil somebody can become for their own gain.
What do you think of the way Pablo Escobar is portrayed in the media and shows like Narcos?
Oh, you know what? Javier and I both think that Narcos portrayed Pablo very well.
Mm-hmm.
The violence in this. Have you seen Narcos?
No.
How old are you?
12.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't see it for a while yet. It's pretty violent, and there's a lot of things that should be in there. It's not all true, I'll tell you that. But if you talk to people who have seen the show, they show a lot of violence in the show Narcos. In real life, the violence was much, much worse than what they had in the show, because if they put the real violence in there, nobody would have ever aired it on television. I mean, that's how extremely violent it was.
With the popularity and interest in Pablo Escobar recently, what would you like people to take away from his ultimate demise?
To show how money and greed corrupts. To show that human life is worth more than any amount of money you could ever attain.
This has been an educational and fun project to do. Pablo Escobar embodies the theme of triumph and tragedy so well. He could have turned away from his drug empire, starting a new life using his billions to help the poor. But the pull of greed was too much, and he sadly paid the ultimate price, losing his life.